And a great pleasure right now to welcome to our show today a man who's written a really interesting book. It's called Brandwashed, Tricks Companies Use to Manipulate Our Minds and Persuade Us to Buy. We're joined by Martin Lindstrom by telephone today. And Martin, good to talk to you and enjoyed reading through the book. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. You make me blush already.
Well, I know the previous book you wrote about biology did so well. I'm sure this one is going to do just as well or better. As someone who's been in the media business and kind of interested in the whole advertising industry, I was fascinated by it. I knew some of the tricks of the trade, but not as many as you talk about in the book. It must have been kind of fun for you to do the research on this.
It was incredible fun. It took us 3 years. I had 3 researchers working on it, and I spent $3 million on conducting some of the experiments for the book in order to get a sense for what is really going on here. And I must admit, I was just so shocked by what I learned. Everything from how certain chemicals are added to products to how we are basically targeted even before we born.
I remember I took a course in advertising in college, and at that time, magazines, obviously, that's kind of changed, but magazine ads, there was always talk, well, are there hidden pictures within ads that maybe had words you couldn't see or subliminal words? I guess that's similar to what's going on today, right?
Well, today it's much more sophisticated, and the reason why is because there's more technology available and because each of us are setting a footprint. Remember, 6% of all newborns have a digital footprint that very second they are born, because we really are setting up accounts about children while we're still pregnant. So really what's happening now is it's much more sophisticated. And I really wanted to disclose all those aspects. One of, I think, the most surprising things I discovered in this study was the fact that even before we are born, we are affected by brand messages. And I learned that because I myself perhaps have been a victim for that. I certainly love some music, bossa nova type of music. And when I talked to my mom and dad, I realized they never played this type of music for me while I was a kid. In fact, I knew that for sure, because the day they rushed to the hospital for me to be delivered, and they dropped the record player on the floor, and it was basically broken at that stage. So the only time they were playing the music for me was while my mom was pregnant. And that gave me the thought, hey, actually maybe we are much more susceptible to the sense of sound and even the sense of taste. And as part of that, we then realized there is indeed brands today, particularly in Asia, which are targeting unborn babies, basically by giving unknowing mothers candy with infused coffee flavors built into it. And surprisingly, while those babies are in the womb, they're being primed to have a preference for that brand. And yes, for sure it happens. I've seen and met groups of babies which suddenly were having a preference for coffee at the age of 15 months, which I wouldn't say is that normal, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's amazing when you think of that. I've heard in the past where if you play certain types of music while the mother is pregnant, maybe the child will be smarter, but I didn't know it affected their buying habits.
No, me neither. And you have to remember, this is a really lucrative type of business, in particular considering the fact, and that's what we learned from lots of the studies I've done specifically for the book, that the brands we buy when we are young, the brands our parents are buying to us, they stick with us for life. It's like 60%, more than 60% of the brands you have in your cupboard is actually decided not by you, not by your wife or your kid, but by your mom. Because we lock 60% of the brands in at a very young age, and it stays with us forever. So the game is, of course, to make you become as loyal to a brand as possible. That explains the reason why the first word most babies in the world are saying right now is not mom and dad, but it's McDonald's.
Yeah, right. And that's why advertisers, particularly in television and radio, want that young demographic, I guess 18 to 35, but you're talking even younger than that now, with children being marketed to heavily. I guess they're more susceptible to try something, but aren't they less susceptible to stay with a brand since they're not as loyal to it? It kind of works against itself, doesn't it?
Well, in many ways, yes, but there's also a sad side to this story, and that is that we are heavily influenced by peer pressure. And just to give you a sense for how powerful this stuff is, as part of my writing, I came across a project which were released in California, where a new software computer game was released, and it was only given to the young and beautiful young kids, the popular ones in school, and the rest had to pay for it, and it became a huge success. Now exactly the same product was released a year later in Australia. The method or the approach was banned, so they had to sell it to everyone, and they flopped within just 2 weeks. So the peer pressure is enormous, and we do know from many experiments, for example, an experiment which I'm quoting in the book, which is done among 200 respondents, which are asked to walk around randomly in the room, and then 5 people are asked or instructed to walk clockwise, but also asked not to communicate that to anyone. That's do it very subtly. And what happens is that within 7 minutes, the entire room is walking clockwise. And as people interviewed later on, the 195, all of them are deeply convinced that they made up their own mind. They were the ones deciding what way to go, and everyone else followed them. So it gives you a sense about how easy we are to be manipulated with. And for me to then take that one step further, I set up a real experiment in LA, inspired by the movie called The Jonases, which were released last year, featuring Demi Moore.
Right.
And in that movie, I'm actually going through exactly the same experiment.
Interesting, yeah. And I know you talk about several different types of influences. One that I was kind of interested in, and I think a lot of people are of course, you see celebrity ads and all that. How powerful is a celebrity attaching a name to a product? I guess you talk about that, right?
Yes, I do, and it has, not surprisingly, an enormous influence. Let me just give you some insight, which I find fascinating. When you see a celebrity endorsing a brand, or even a doctor, a professor, or some authority, your brain literally shuts down and stops thinking. We more and more take, in particular, advice from authorities as being the truth. So we're not adding a lot of rational thinking to it. And that's the reason why this stuff had such an enormous power. But what we also learned from our experiment in LA, where we literally had a real family, we're filming them using 35 cameras, and we're following them as they had to spread the word of mouth with 10 different brands. What we realized as part of this experiment was that when they recommended brands, when we recommend brands to each other, we actually are doing almost the same as when an expert is talking to us. We shut down our brain, and we really say, I'm going to trust that guy because I trust that person. And that's the reason why word of mouth is so incredibly powerful. And just to put this into perspective, 1/4 of everything this family was talking about was about brands. We actually realized that brands is a huge part of our life. In fact, 51% of every conversation this family had during the dinner table was about brands. So brands is a huge part of our lives, and there's no doubt about that. I predict, as based on this research study, that we in the future will have what I call stereo cells. So fake families planted around our society would only have one role: to receive a check every month to promote brands, but basically none of us is aware of it.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating topic. The name of the book is called Brandwashed. We've been talking with Martin Lindstrom. Wish we had more time. I know we're limited today, but Martin, give me a website how people can get a hold of the book, or maybe send you a message.
Yes, you'll check out the book at martinlindstrom.com. It's MartinLindstrom.com, or you can just purchase it on Amazon.com.
Great. Martin, appreciate you taking a few minutes today, and we'll look forward to talking to you again. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, me too. Welcome. Thanks.